This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
It feels like you can get your credit scores anywhere these days. Random websites, card statements, budgeting apps, heck, even your dog might bark out a few numbers. It's true. Credit Karma isn't the only place you can find them. But we actually do more with your scores to help you find your next financial opportunity. Like a more rewarding credit card, a game plan that helps you pay down debt faster, or a personal loan to help you save more on interest payments each month. Cha-ching! The possibilities are kinda endless. Download Intuit Credit Karma today to get started.
This 80s horror flick may not be filled with superhuman slashers or psychotic killers, but it still kept audiences frozen in fear. Instead, it tells the story of an ordinary suburban family whose peaceful lives are shattered by an invasion of unknown supernatural forces, each one playing on deep-seated fears. There's the unnerving clown doll that springs to life, embodying the terror of childhood toys turned sinister. A seemingly normal closet becomes a gateway to another dimension, pulling anything and anyone into its mysterious void. Outside, a twisted tree comes to life, breaking through a bedroom window to stalk its prey. But the most chilling image is that of the innocent young daughter, her tiny hands pressed against the static of a flickering TV screen, her voice eerily calm as she announces to the household, "They're here." With it being an HBO staple in the early to mid-80s, I'm sure many young kids stumbled upon this PG-rated scarefest unaware like I did. Does it still give me the creeps? Stay tuned to find out. So slide across the kitchen floor, take the raw steak out of the fridge, and get ready to come to the light as Ben Carpenter, Bethany Wells, and I discuss Poltergeist from 1982 on this episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast.
In Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Steven Spielberg went beyond our world, now within the safety and comfort of an average home.
Good night.
He crosses a frightening new threshold.
What is it?
Into another world. Poltergeist. It knows what scares you. Poltergeist, rated PG.
I'm Tim Williams, the mastermind behind the mic at the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. Joining me on each epic episode is a guest co-host who's as crazy about 80s flicks as they are about wearing parachute pants and solving Rubik's Cubes. We're diving into nostalgic treasures we saw at the local theater, rented on VHS tapes, or discovered on cable TV. From blockbusters that make you say,
I feel the need for speed.
to hidden gems that'll have you screaming,
They're here.
It's a blast to relive these old memories and share our thoughts on what made these movies so special. We reminisce about our first-time watch experiences, share our favorite scenes, and even discover fascinating behind-the-scenes tales about the cast and crew along the way. Haven't hit that subscribe button yet? What are you waiting for?
Come on, do it.
On Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. And hey, while you're at it, be a pal and drop us a written review along with a 5-star rating to tell us what you think about us.
The sportos, motorheads, geeks, sluts, bloods, wastoids, dweebies, they all adore him. They think he's a righteous dude.
Take a day off and come hang out with us on social media. Just search 80s Flick Flashback on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And don't forget to bookmark 80sflickflashback.com for more gnarly content.
Get out of town. I didn't know you did anything creative.
Want to crank it all the way up to 11? Become a supporter on buymeacoffee.com for only $5 a month.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Click the link in our episode show notes, and while you're there, soak up the extra trivia and fun stuff that didn't make it into today's show. Thanks again for tuning in. Now, let's get right into today's episode.
Welcome to the party, pal.
All right, welcome in, everybody. So glad to have you on this episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. It is spooky season, and not necessarily because I plan to do this, but both of my films that I chose for this month are rated PG and are considered scary films. But yeah, of course, we talked about Poltergeist. We talked about Beetlejuice last time, and now we're talking about Poltergeist from 1982. And I've got thoughts. I've got lots of memories and thoughts, but we'll get there. But welcome to the podcast once again. Glad to have these two co-hosts together for the first time, I guess, on an episode together. But always glad to have both of them. Welcome in, Mr. Ben Carpenter. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited for this one. I've been looking forward to it.
Cool. And Miss Bethany Wells. How are you, Bethany?
I'm just fine. I'm, glad my kids aren't being sucked into the closet right now. So that's good.
It's always a good thing.
That's good.
Yeah. I promise not to get them any clown toys for Christmas. So. All right. Well,
why is that the creepiest thing in this movie? It does the least.
Yes.
It is the creepiest thing.
Oh God, yeah. Sorry, bad flashbacks. All right, we're gonna get there. All right, so we'll start with Ben. When did you see Poltergeist for the very first time?
I saw it in theaters.
Oh,
I was 9 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And some mean adult in my life took me to see it. It was, like you said, it was rated PG.
Mm-hmm.
It was it was a Steven Spielberg produced movie. Right. At least. I'm sure we'll get to that. But and so they assumed that I was not going to be scarred for life. And I don't remember being scarred. I don't think I was scarred by it, but there were definitely some scenes in it where I'm sure I had some sleepless nights as a child remembering them.
All right, Bethany, when did you see this one for the first time?
Way too young. But I remember it being on. It was probably one of those like HBO free weekends. My parents, recorded it on a VHS and then we just had it forever. And I don't know. I just loved this movie as a kid for some unexplained reason. I am not a horror movie person at all. And so the fact that I was really into this movie, I know I watched it many times as a kid.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I can't explain why. But I do have a soft spot for it. So
I watched this one on HBO, and sometimes going back that far, because this came out in 82, so probably on HBO in 83. So I was not even 10 yet. I was probably like around 7 or 8, so pretty young. But I remember the memory that I have is the commercials coming on. It was going to premiere, quote unquote, premiere on HBO, like the big movie was coming on, and it just intrigued me because it seemed like it was going to be kind of scary, but it was PG. And so I remember asking my mom, like, hey, can I watch this? And she was like, well, I'll watch it with you, just in case. So we watched it that night, and I think it scared me, but I don't think it traumatized me necessarily the first time. But like you said, because it was on all the time, I just found myself watching it over and over, because being a PG movie, it'd be on like 4 times during the day because it didn't show anything rated R until after 8 or 9 o'clock. And so I watched it over and over again. And so a couple of years later, we rented a house, and my bedroom was right outside where this tree was. And so there was a bad storm one night, and that's all I could think about was that tree coming through the window and trying to suck me in. And so that was my first traumatized moment. Like, why did this movie scar me so bad? And then I did have like a clown doll, not the same one, because that one was definitely like much bigger, but I did have a clown doll, I think, around that time. And I think after that movie, like, I put it away, and like it was never out, it was like in the closet or in a drawer. Like, I never had it out where I could see it at night. But the tree, I remember really like tormenting me that, a couple of nights when I remember one time calling my mom in the room and like, the tree's going to get me, the tree. She's like, no, it was just a movie. It's okay. So so that the tree really got me. And watching it now, it's like,
wait, the tree really actually get you, did it?
No. I'm saying the tree scene really impacted me. But watching it now, it's like the tree is so fake. Even from the beginning, like when they showed the tree outside, I was like, that is so not, doesn't even look like real wood.
Paper mache tree.
Yeah.
It's a Tim Burton tree. Tim Burton planted it.
Yeah. All right. So how long had it been since you rewatched it before rewatching it for the podcast? I'll go with Bethany first on this one.
Oh boy. So I mean, I think it was a few years ago. It's been fairly recent.
Mm-hmm.
Laramie's always trying to get me to watch horror movies because, like I said, I'm not a big scary movie person.
Mm-hmm.
But I have an affinity for like haunted house things like that I can get into.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, "Well, yeah." I was like, it's been a long time since I've seen Poltergeist. Let's watch it.
Mm-hmm.
So we did, and it holds up.
What about you, Ben?
Still scary.
I actually watched it last October with my daughter.
Okay.
And so this time I asked my sons if they'd ever seen it. Neither one of them had seen it. And so the plan was I was going to watch it with them, but then they were busy with other things. And my daughter was like, I'll watch it again with you. So watched it again with my daughter last night. So
what did she think when she saw it last year? Her initial thoughts, I guess.
Yeah, she avoided scary movies until pretty late in life.
Okay.
So she's hasn't been watching scary movies for very long.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't. She liked it well enough to watch it again with me last night. She really liked it. I don't know that it scared her.
Yeah.
But she likes the story. Finds it entertaining. So.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like watching it now, it's not necessarily scary. It is eerie. Like it's there's tension. There's more of like a thriller type of vibe to it. Because reading the research, there are no fatalities. Like the only thing that dies in this movie is the bird at the beginning. That's the only fatality in the movie. So it's not like your typical horror movie. Like there were times like I was expecting like the typical horror cliches when the guy goes into the kitchen. I'm like, okay, the knife is going to come out and like stab him, and like, but that doesn't happen. Even when he's like peeling his fake face away,
that's the worst.
I was like, this was PG in 1982.
Yeah,
like that should have scared me more than a fake tree, but that obviously didn't bother me.
I think if anything scared my daughter, it was the clown.
Clowns are creepy, man.
Yeah, I think maybe even last night when we got to the clown part, she was like, "Nope." She just started saying, "Nope."
I love it. So it's been a while for me. Like I remember, it was probably 4 or 5 years ago. We did like a little family vacation up to the mountains around this time between like it was still like late October, early November. And I think because AMC always has it on, and Tyra, my wife, she was like, "Oh, Poltergeist is on," and that's when I realized like that's one of her favorite horror movies. Like I had no idea you love this, and so she was watching it on TV, and so I was catching like bits and pieces of it, and I was like, I want to watch because I hadn't seen it. It'd been years since I had watched it. I was like, you know what? I want to watch it from the beginning. I don't want to watch it, with the commercials, and kind of in and out because we're on vacation or whatever. So I think we got back, and it was probably like a month or so later. It was still streaming on, or I could watch it on demand on AMC with limited commercials or whatever. Like it's PG. What are they going to cut out? A couple of cuss words maybe, but so I watched it again then. That's when I was like, man, this is really like, why was I scared of this? Like, it's not that scary, but once again, to a 7-8-year-old kid, it's going to leave a mark. So then, watching it again today, it is enjoyable. It is a slow burn type of movie though. Like it has some scary things at the beginning, but that middle where with the scientists or they're kind of studying
spiritualists
studying stuff at the house.
Yeah. They're from some university nearby.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of exposition there, and a lot of like, telling stories and all that kind of stuff. So I was kind of trying to keep from dozing a little bit during that part, but it cranks it up at the end when the house really starts coming after them is when it gets good at that point. Like that's where it gets kind of fun.
And now these messages. The holiday season officially starts when you get that first card in the mail. Shutterfly makes it easy to add more meaning to the everyday with hundreds of holiday card designs that can be personalized in seconds with your favorite photos from this year. Select your greeting, customize the color, and even add little extras like personalized foil to make a holiday card that really shines. Enjoy 40% off with code SMILE40 at Shutterfly.com and send something meaningful this year. See site for more details.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Shop Blinds.com right now and get up to 45% off select styles. Rules and restrictions may apply.
What seems to be the problem, pal?
There's just so much pain in the world, so many issues. I don't think I can bear it.
Well, friendo, it sounds like you could use a dose of pop culture roulette.
Pop culture roulette? What's that? Some sort of pop culture themed podcast or something?
That's right, sonny boy. When hope seems far, dive into some PCR.
But I already get my entertainment news from Variety.
Huh, that's pretty good. If you're a chucklehead, PCR gives you news you need, condensed, unfiltered, and raw, from 3 nerds who know a little something about something.
Wow, okay, sign me up.
That's the spirit. Pop Culture Roulette. New episodes every Monday, available on all major podcast directories.
Are you a fan of movies and TV shows inspired by comics? Ready for a podcast that dives deep into the thrilling world of adaptations? Well, look no further. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. This is your go-to podcast for all things comics on screen. I'm your host, Bethany Wells, and every Monday we explore the dynamic universe where ink meets action. We break down the classics, reveal hidden gems, and uncover the creative process behind your favorite adaptations. Subscribe to Moving Panels now on your favorite podcast platform and join us on this epic journey through the pages of comics and onto the big screen. Remember, new episodes drop every Monday. Don't miss out. Moving Panels, where every panel has a story and every adaptation is a blockbuster. Subscribe today, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
All right, well, let's talk about story origin and pre-production. We're going to talk more about which most people know about, is who really directed this movie. Was it Tobe Hooper or was it Steven Spielberg? Will I be able to answer that question? Maybe not, but we'll talk about it either way. So 2 screenwriters, Michael Gross and Mark Victor, wrote an unproduced comedy called Turn Left and Die and an action film called Death Hunt. Steven Spielberg had recognized their work and invited them to work with him after a screening of the 1940s movie, I think A Guy Named Joe, which is actually shown in the movie. He showed it to them, expressed interest in remaking it, which he eventually did in 1989 with the movie Always. But he also mentioned during that meeting a ghost story idea that he wanted to turn into a script. So Michael Gross contacted Spielberg the next day, expressing their interest in the ghost story, but not the remake of A Guy Named Joe. When plans with another writer fell through, Spielberg brought them on board. Spielberg initially wanted Stephen King to co-write the screenplay, but King was unavailable. I did read in one spot that King has said that he was on a transatlantic ship going somewhere, and he didn't get the message until it was too late. And basically saying if he would have got the message, he would have done it. But who knows which drug he was on at that point in the 80s. So it's possible. So a clause in Spielberg's contract with Universal Studios prevented him from directing another film while he was preparing to make E.T. the Extraterrestrial. So Steven Spielberg decided to work on this film as a producer and E.T. as the director back to back. Principal photography on Poltergeist ended on August of 1981. Spielberg took a few weeks off and then began work on E.T., while Tobe Hooper spent 10 weeks in the editing room completing his final cut. Spielberg supervised the visual effects for both films simultaneously, which were produced at Industrial Light and Magic. Once post-production work on Poltergeist began in early 1982, Spielberg was in total control. He was responsible for the final edit of the film, the final sound mixes and looping, the supervision of the visual effects, and the selection of Jerry Goldsmith as the composer of the score. Poltergeist and E.T. actually opened to theaters nationwide only 1 week between each other during the summer of 1982. Poltergeist on June 4th and E.T. on June 11th. Time and Newsweek referred to it as the Spielberg Summer. There were suggestions that Spielberg, as well as being a co-producer and co-writer for Poltergeist, had also acted as a de facto co-director. This view was supported by various statements Spielberg made regarding his involvement, including a quote from the Los Angeles Times on May 24th before the movie came out that said, when he said, "Toby isn't a take charge sort of guy. If a question was asked and an answer wasn't immediately forthcoming, I'd jump in and say what we could do. Toby would nod agreement, and that became the process of collaboration." There was a bit of a dispute between Spielberg and Toby over who actually directed Poltergeist. It seems that there was an investigation into whether Hooper's official credit was being undermined by statements Spielberg made about the authorship of the film. In the end, MGM and UA Entertainment Company paid $15,000 to Hooper because Spielberg got a bigger credit than him in the trailers. The co-producer Frank Marshall mentioned that Spielberg was the creative force behind the movie, while Hooper claimed that he did at least half of the storyboards. The week of the film's release, The Hollywood Reporter printed an open letter from Spielberg to Tobe Hooper. I mean, why? It's not good to say, I'm sorry that you do it, in the Hollywood Reporter. But Spielberg said, "Regrettably, some of the press has misunderstood the rather unique creative relationship with which you and I shared throughout the making of Poltergeist. I enjoyed your openness in allowing me, as a writer and a producer, a wide berth for creative involvement, just as I know you were happy with the freedom you had to direct Poltergeist so wonderfully. Through the screenplay, you accepted a vision of this very intense movie from the start, and as the director, you delivered the goods. You performed responsibly and professionally throughout, and I wish you great success on your next project." There's a lot that's not said.
Yeah.
There was a lot more in there, but I was like, I'm not going to spend the whole podcast talking about it. But, there was mixed reports from the cast and crew. Many of them said, Toby would set up the shots and then Spielberg would direct them, or if Toby gave direction, Spielberg would come back and say, "We'll try it this way." And they never knew which take they would use for the final film. But they also knew Tobe Hooper was chosen because he had directed Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was not a big budget movie. And a lot of people felt like he just took the back seat with Spielberg being who Spielberg was. If he's going to give a direction, who am I to,
right,
to go against him? And so, yeah, so it's, I've never seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so I don't have any reference of it. But most people say that it's the only movie of his that doesn't feel like a Tobe Hooper movie. It feels much more like a Spielberg movie. And there are certain scenes I'm like, this is totally Spielberg right here. I mean, this is very classic.
It has Spielberg vibes.
Yeah. Yeah. But
some of the camera placement and movement is just you just see it. It's like, how could it have been put together by anybody other than Spielberg?
Yeah.
It looks like it takes place down the street from E.T.
And they literally filmed it like it was a very short, very close to the two locations were very close to each other. And I think there was Spielberg made one quote about he wanted both of them to come out very close to each other because he wanted to be like a double feature. Like he wanted people to watch both movies back to back or around the same time. So
they really are like companion pieces. I mean, they're both about a suburban family that something mysterious, E.T. it's benevolent, and this movie it's malevolent. But
right.
And there's some other interesting things that aren't the same. Like in E.T., the parents are divorced, and there's a certain family dynamic there. And in this one thing that struck me about this movie watching it last night, like it's pretty rare to see a married couple that's so obviously in love with one another.
There's
no tension between them or anything. It's just a loving husband-wife relationship.
And they're both really good parents. Like they're both very attentive. It's not like the events of the movie took place because either one of them were neglectful. They both were open and listened to each other. It just happened. I always feel like horror movies are a metaphor for the bigger horrors that we have in our life. And this one's definitely that idea of like, you can do everything right as a parent and outside forces can still cause mass devastation in your home. Because I mean, Carol Ann gets taken not because their parents are off doing it or, you know, doing drugs or something. It's because they're trying to save their other child. And so it's not a neglect. It's a we're doing the best we can, and something still goes wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting. I hadn't heard that take on it from anybody before. That's sort of what's. You're right. That's sort of what's scary about it is.
Yeah.
That, you know, they didn't do anything to make this happen.
Right.
No, they were a good family. They work hard. They're loving. Yeah. I was even like getting a kick out of the very beginning where the daughter, who's like 15 years old, goes to leave the kitchen, and the pool guys that are digging out the pool is like gross. And she just like flips him the bird. And I'm just like, yeah, because your mom has taught you, your mom and dad have taught you you're worth more than that. And you don't have to take it. And she snaps back. And her mom just laughs and moves on. Like I would have had issues with the people in my yard.
Right.
But again, it's the 80s. But like, they're a good family. There's nothing sinister about them.
Yeah.
Something still bad happens.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing, like the scene where, you know, the son comes in because he's, you know, freaked out by the storm. His dad puts him on his back and takes him in and like, you know, he comforts him. And then Carol Ann's like kind of interrupting. He doesn't snap at her. He's like, oh, you know, take a message. No, it was like you said, it was like, I was like, I don't remember the last time I watched a movie where it was like that loving family where there was no real drama or in the family. Like you said, there were, you nailed it. I don't have to repeat what you said, but you put in it better words than I could have.
But then again, also the best thing about that scene as a parent watching it is then it doesn't matter. He did all the right things. They still ended up in bed with him. You still put another person's hand in your face while you're trying to sleep.
Right.
Never fails.
Yep.
Oh, that was the one thing I meant to look up when I was watching it, is I wanted to find out when did TV stations, like when did it actually happen when TV stations stopped, you know, going off the air? I'd read it several years ago, like it used to be at midnight or 1 o'clock. And then at some point they decided, oh, we can still make money overnight. And so they did away with that. But I remember the national anthem playing and then the screen going.
Yeah, I do.
That was before Bethany's time, I think.
No, I had to explain that to my daughter. She actually asked about that. Like, why are they playing the national anthem? And I had to explain it. Well, TV stations used to go off, and you know they were off for a few hours in the middle of the night.
I just knew it because of TV. Because movies like Poltergeist and Curly Sue, like those movies, I'm just like, they used to play the national anthem.
Yeah. So this was before infomercials, because I guess infomercials are probably what took over the late night.
Right.
And infomercials and the 700 Club. One of the two.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, let's jump into casting. Before we talk about the cast, we'll have to talk about the so-called Poltergeist Cursed. That was an urban legend largely based on 4 cast members' deaths between 1982 and 1988. However, one of these deaths can be considered unnatural. 22-year-old Dominique Dunn's ex-boyfriend strangled her after she rebuffed his attempt to reconcile, and she died 5 days later after being in a coma. That's the girl who played the oldest daughter. Julian Beck died after a long battle with stomach cancer. Will Sampson died from complications of a heart-lung transplant. And Heather O'Rourke, who played
Carol
Ann. I knew the Ann part, but I was like, I'm saying it wrong. I was going to say Julianne. Like, Julianne's not right. What is it?
Carol Ann. Don't go into the light, Carol Ann.
Yeah. Heather O'Rourke, who played Carol Ann, died from complications of intestinal stenosis after being misdiagnosed with Crohn's disease in 1987. Jo Beth Williams, Craig T. Nelson, and Oliver Robbins, the rest of the Freeling family cast members from the first movie, as well as many other main cast members from the 2 sequels, are still alive as of 2023. So, but I do remember the stories about her, Carol Ann, and like it was the curse. You know, there was a mystery illness and all this other kind of crazy stuff. I don't remember so much about the older daughter's murder, but I remembered about Carol Ann. And I think like back, before the internet, when your best friend and your fifth period class that you've only known for like 6 months can tell you that, oh, the lady that played the psychic, she died too, and got murdered, some weird story that you believe for the next 20 years until you found out.
Because Google doesn't exist yet.
Right, exactly. So, back when we thought that Mikey from the Life commercial died eating Pop Rocks and Coke, right?
Wait, that's not what happened?
That's not what happened, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And Steve from Blue's Clues didn't leave Blue's Clues because he was a drug addict. I believe that for years. I feel like any movie or television show where more than one tragic death happens, people want to put a curse on it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because, this is the same with Glee. You've got three, multiple deaths, but also it was a huge show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so people try to associate, it's the Glee curse. And, well, no. But, yes, tragic things happen to those people.
Yeah. And they did an interview with the one who, Oliver Robbins, who played the son, who was like, if you really think about it, all those things would have probably happened to them whether they were in this movie or not. So to think that was some kind of correlation is really dumb. It's like, I hope not, because I'm still alive. And, it's like coming for me next. But he's like, I believe in the paranormal, but I don't think that their deaths were anything because of that. They're just, stuff that happened. He's like, the guy she was dating when they were making the movie. So before they were making the movie. So that wasn't something that happened after. And then, the other ones were all health related. So.
Well, did you see anything about the poster connection behind?
No.
Okay. So last night I'm watching it and I've never noticed this before, but I look behind Robbie's bed.
Yeah.
And there's a poster that says Super Bowl 22, 1988.
Yes, I did see that, but I didn't I was like,
why is there that's 6 years?
Yeah.
Why is there a poster for something that's not going to happen for another 6 years? And I looked it up, and it turns out that I couldn't find an answer as to why that poster was in there. But Heather O'Rourke, what I read was, and I think this is correct from what I read, Heather O'Rourke actually got sick on that day that Super Bowl was played, and she died the next. I guess she was already kind of sick, but she got violently ill.
Right.
Took her to the hospital. She died the next day, not on the same day as that Super Bowl.
Right.
But the next day. So that's
a little weird.
If that's
creepy.
True, that's a little creepy.
Yeah. Though I did. So I noticed the poster, and from where I was sitting with my TV, I couldn't tell if it was said 83 or 88, just because it's not, fully in focus. But then I was like, well, still, even if it's at 83, the movie's set in 82. So it was kind of, it was kind of a fleeting thought, but I didn't see anything about that in the notes about that I remember. So that's interesting. But yeah.
Right. I had the same thought, like maybe I was misreading it, but then I saw that it does say Super Bowl XXII, which was that would have been, that matches up. Yeah. So anyway, weird.
Interesting. All right, let's jump into casting. So we've got Craig T. Nelson as Steve Freeling. He is known for his roles as Hayden Fox in the ABC sitcom Coach, Deputy Warden Ward Wilson in the 1980 film Stir Crazy, Bert Nickerson in All the Right Moves in 83, which we've covered on the podcast already. He was also in Action Jackson, Turner and Hooch, The Devil's Advocate. He's been on TV and drama series The District, as well as the NBC sitcom My Name is Earl. Of course, he's the voice of Bob Parr, Mr. Incredible in The Incredibles and its sequel. And most recently, he was in the NBC drama series Parenthood from 2010 to 2015. And most recently, as Dale Ballard on the CBS sitcom Young Sheldon from 2017 to 24. But my dad was a huge Coach fan. And I remember watching episodes of Coach, which were hilarious.
One day he's really going to take off and people are really going to take a notice of him. He's just really, I just really hope he gets a big break. I like him.
Yeah. He's done a few things. Maybe maybe people will recognize him a little better. But yeah, but they were saying like him and Jo Beth Williams were pretty much kind of unknowns at this point, like or very early in their careers. So we'll talk about Jo Beth Williams next as Diane Freeling. She rose to prominence appearing in such films as Kramer versus Kramer in 79, Stir Crazy in 80, The Big Chill in 83, The Day After in 83, Teachers in 84. She also won some Emmy Award. She was an Emmy Award nominee for the TV movie Adam in 83, which I remember watching and being very freaked out by. the TV miniseries Baby M in 1988. She's also been a guest star on Frasier. She starred in the TV series The Client, and she was also had recurring roles on Dexter and Private Practice. So, yeah. Do you remember the movie Adam? I know the guy who hosted America's Most Wanted. It's the true story about his son Adam that was abducted and they never found him. Yeah, it was. I remember I was like watching that as a kid. I was like, well, why am I watching this? But it was compelling, like as a kid to watch it. You know, my parents were watching it, and so what else was I going to do? That was before the internet and video games. That you could play in your room. Another film I probably watched too young was freaked out by. So, but yeah. So how do we feel about them as the couple? I mean, I think we've already kind of mentioned. You could tell they loved each other. But I thought they had good chemistry as a couple and did well.
Yeah, and I think. Craig T. Nelson supplies some of the comic relief, and Jo Beth Williams, I think, sort of anchors the emotional part of the movie.
Yes,
her performance is like that scene when she's on the stairs and she says that Carol Ann passed through her. That's just so. Yeah, just I like get chills just thinking about that moment. So yeah, she's
just so earnest.
Yeah. Thinking about that, like there's weird scenes, but the weirdest scene to me is like, early in the movie when she's in the kitchen with Carol Ann, she turns back and the chairs are all, on top of the table. But like a scene later, it's the night, she hasn't cooked dinner for her kids and she's sliding things across the floor. Like, normal people would just leave the house. Why are you playing with this thing? So that scene, even rewatching it, I was like, this just seems, odd. But I guess once again, you're kind of thinking like they don't know what it is. It's just something. And she, we'll talk about, because once again, as a kid, I had no idea she was smoking marijuana when they're in the bedroom. So watching it now, it's like, okay, so she's open to mystical things.
Yeah.
Expands your mind. So I could see that it made a little bit more correlation where she's like, it's cool, it's all good.
It's just spirits and they're happy. We're just coexisting.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, well, with that time, they would have been hippies,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
14 years prior to this, before they got married and had kids, so.
Yeah. So it correlated a little bit better watching it again. So, but. All right, so we'll talk about Dominique Dunn, who mentioned earlier as Dana Freeling, the older daughter. She was born and raised in Santa Monica, California. She made her on-screen debut with the television film Diary of a Teenage Hitchhiker in 1979 and played recurring roles on the drama series Family in 1980. She was also in the comedy series Breaking Away. Her breakthrough came with the starring role of Dana Freeling in the horror film Poltergeist. She went on to headline the Western film The Shadow Riders in 1982. And portray Amy Kent on the crime series Chips, also in 1982. But unfortunately, like we mentioned before, in October of 1982, she was murdered by her ex-boyfriend, John Thomas Sweeney. She fell into a coma and died 5 days later on November 4th, 1982. In a court case that gained significant media coverage, Sweeney was convicted of voluntary manslaughter and served 3.5 years in prison. Very sad. So now there are 2 sequels. We have Poltergeist 2 and Poltergeist 3, which I have not watched, not recently. So I don't know if they recast her in the second one, or because she was 16, maybe she was away at college and they just she was away. So I don't
remember. I like you, I have not seen those. I have seen them, both of them, but not in a long time. And I don't feel like there's any reason to. So.
When I finished watching Poltergeist 1 today, I was like, I kind of want to start the second one just to see what happens. I'm like, no, but I did watch the trailer, which was kind of like a teaser trailer kind of a thing, because even then I remember, because like there's a phone ringing, she picks up the phone, she goes, "They're back," and I was like, oh, I remember that being like commercials or whatever.
Right.
So, but anyway, but they didn't show her at all. Like you saw the brother, you saw Carol Ann, the parent. So I was like, I'm curious, but I didn't look that up. So I didn't know if you guys had seen it already. Moving on, Oliver Robbins as Robbie Freeling. His first film roles were in the 1982 TV movie $1 Million Infield and the 1982 ABC TV movie Don't Go to Sleep. He is best known for his portrayal in Poltergeist and its sequel. His other feature film role was the 1982 comedy Airplane 2, the sequel, as Jimmy.
Good for him.
Yeah, remember that. But interesting enough, both of the terrors that plagued Robbie came from Steven Spielberg's own fears as a child, the fear of clowns and the tree outside his window. So,
both very scary.
Yeah, I have Spielberg to thank for both of my fears that I had from this movie. So, and then we've got Heather O'Rourke as Carol Ann Freeling. She had her breakthrough starring role in this movie, which received critical acclaim and established her as an influential figure in the genre. She reprised her role in Poltergeist 2, The Other Side, which came out in 86, and Poltergeist 3 in 88, the last of which was released posthumously. She worked in television, appearing in recurring roles on the comedy series Happy Days from 82 to 83, as well as Webster in 83, and she starred as Sarah Brogan in the TV film Surviving a Family in Crisis. She was nominated for 6 Young Artist Awards, winning once for her role on Webster. On February 1st, 1988, she died following 2 cardiac arrests, her cause of death later being ruled as congenital stenosis of the intestine complicated by septic shock. Very sad. Very sad. But that one said that was misdiagnosed as Crohn's, so they really didn't know what it was. But yeah. But I do remember her being on Webster. I was a big Webster fan as a kid, so I remember her being on that. And maybe Happy Days. I don't think I was watching Happy Days that late because the last couple seasons were pretty terrible.
Once they jumped the shark, literally.
Yeah. Well, once it was like, Richie had left. I think
it was just Fonzie and
Joni and Chachi had their own spinoff. They were gone. I think they were trying to hold on to LaFonz, who was looking more like he was 50 than he was, in his 20s at that point.
And he wasn't cool anymore. Like he was.
He tried. He tried really hard.
He was just. Yeah. Bless his heart.
So, I can't even remember how they bring somebody. They brought in other characters to try to fill in, and it was terrible. But Drew Barrymore was considered for the role of Carol Ann and during early pre-production, but Steven Spielberg wanted someone more angelic. But Barrymore's audition ultimately helped her land the part of Gertie in E.T., so she still worked for him around the same time. The story is Heather O'Rourke was chosen for the film when she was eating lunch with her mom and sister at the MGM commissary. Steven Spielberg came up to her and wanted O'Rourke for the part of Carol Ann. She initially failed the screen test because she kept laughing her way through the audition, even when she was supposed to be afraid. Spielberg thought she was too young to take the part seriously, but he still recognized something special in her, so he asked her to come back for another audition. This time, to bring a scary storybook with her. He also asked her to scream, so she screamed and screamed until she started crying, and that's what got her cast as Carol Ann.
She's so great in that part. She's such a typical small child. She's 4 years old?
Yeah.
Looks like.
Yeah, 4 or 5, yeah.
Yeah. And it just really, really great to watch her. I mean, she acts like my child did.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always for some reason that scene with the dead parakeet or whatever has always stuck with me, for when he's hungry.
Yeah. Put the stuff in the box.
When he's lonely.
I think whenever we've had I don't know, when it just pops in my head for whatever reason. And
oh yeah.
Very sweet. I mean, that was the thing.
Yeah, and she's very natural.
Yeah, I don't think I put in the notes, but they were talking about the scene where there was a wind machine that was kind of sucking them when she was holding onto the bed and being pulled into the closet, and she got really freaked out and really scared, and so Steven Spielberg had to turn the fan off, sat with her for 20 or 30 minutes, and just said, you know what, we don't have to do this anymore. And you can tell the later scene, there's a something dangling from the bed, but you can tell it's not a real person, or it's not her. I think there's one scene, I think she kind of turns her head, but most of the other shots were all you could tell was a dummy body or, some kind of mechanics or whatever. So I did notice that watching it today. All right, well, moving along to Zelda Rubinstein as Tangina Barons, the psychic. Playing Jenny, she was a regular on David E. Kelley's Emmy Award-winning television series Picket Fences for 2 seasons. She made guest appearances in the TV show Poltergeist: Legacy in 1996 as a seer Christina and was the voice of the Skittles candies in their long-running Taste the Rainbow ad campaign. She was also known for outspoken activism for little people and her early participation in the fight against HIV and AIDS. Her and Heather O'Rourke were the only cast members to have appeared in all 3 Poltergeist films. So. But yeah, and I read a couple places that she also claimed that she was a psychic as well, like she could predict things that would happen before they would happen, kind of unsubstantiated, but it was claimed that she did. She didn't like Toby Hooper very much either, which she got a little flack for from the rest of the cast, but we won't get into that.
Well, maybe she saw something in him.
Well, she pretty much assumed that he was on drugs. Like that's what she thought he was not. He was being his laid back demeanor was more from she didn't call it drugs, she called it something else, like altering chemicals, I think is what she used or something like that. So but other cast was like, I don't know why that she laid into him. He was nice to everybody. He was so nice to her, nice to everybody else. So I didn't really mention anyone else in the cast. Like those are the main ones that had other, you would recognize. There are 2 like cameos I do want to mention, kind of that guys, as if Nicholas was here. The first one I did not recognize in the show. When I was going through the credits, the name I recognized immediately, and that name is Dirk Blocker. And I know because it's such a funny name, that is his name, Dirk Blocker. He plays Jeff Shaw. He's the neighbor riding the bike with the beer at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, okay.
So he is best known. How I know him is from his role as Hitchcock on the NBC comedy show Brooklyn Nine-Nine that's ran, more recently. So, he's very much younger there. Yeah, you know who it is?
I'm going to have to go back.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yep. So that's Hitchcock, Hitchcock and Scully. Or have you ever watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Ben?
I've seen a few episodes, and actually one of my sons has just said a few days ago that he wants to start at the beginning and watch it with me. So
it's so funny.
I will soon have seen it.
Yeah, so they're like the older cops that have been there forever and like will never do any work, but they're they're always eating and trying to do weird stuff. But he has appeared in other films such as Starman, Shortcuts, The Prince of Darkness, and The Border. He's guest starred on television shows including Criminal Minds, X-Files, MASH, Newhart, Murder, She Wrote, The Original Night Court, and Little House on the Prairie. So, yeah, when I saw Dirk Blocker, I was like, wait, where was he in this movie? And I had to go to IMDb to find out who he was. And so when I saw they had the picture of him on the bike with the beer, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is him. I recognized this person immediately. He's listed as pool worker number 2. So one of the creepy guys, harassing the daughter. And that's Sonny Landham, who from The Warriors, Southern Comfort, most well known from 48 Hours and Predator. He was also in Lock Up in 89, and he was hurled out of a window by Carl Weathers in Action Jackson in 88. Good old Sonny Landham. You looking him up, Ben?
I am. I'm
curious now.
Well, I do remember one of them looked
familiar.
Sort of had Native American features.
Yeah, he was the one on the far right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I was actually looking up because I was wondering if you were going to mention the boss, Mr. T.
He was
sort of a that guy.
Yeah, he is a that guy as well. Yeah, he's mainly been in like comedies or things that I remember. I know him more from like comedic movies. Yeah, I almost put him on the list, but yeah, I was like, But yeah, he's definitely another that guy because I when he first popped up, I was like, oh, that guy's been in a ton of stuff as well.
He's one of those that he looks so familiar, and then I look up his filmography, and I'm like, I don't think I've seen any of this stuff. How do I know?
You've just seen Poltergeist 100 times.
Right. Yeah, sometimes that happens.
It's like he's been in one other movie you've seen 1,000 times. Like, oh, that's why he looks so familiar. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, maybe.
He's been in one episode of 700 television shows.
Exactly.
All right.
Yep.
I'm sure I've seen half of them.
Mm-hmm. That's like when I go down the list, and it's like Murder, She Wrote, The Love Boat. What else? Fantasy. I like those that any kind of actor from the 80s had to have been at least, or Dukes of Hazzard, or Knight Rider. The A-Team. Yeah, they've just been a guest on those kind of shows. But
Like Laramie makes fun of me because we'll be watching something now, and I'm just like, who is that person? I know them from somewhere. And he'll look it up and he's like, well, they were in like 4 episodes of Gossip Girl. And I was like, so is everybody else my age. Everybody had a 4-episode arc on Gossip Girl. There were hundreds of them.
I can honestly say that's kind of how this podcast got started, because I would do the same thing. I'd be like, where have I seen this person before? Which is how I discovered IMDb. And so then after that, after watching a movie, I would want to read all the trivia about every movie I ever saw on IMDb, which is why I spend so much time on the trivia and the background stuff on the podcast. So, they say make the podcast you want to listen to. So this is the podcast I want to listen to, and there's a few other people that like it too. So I appreciate that.
And now these messages.
What's up, dudes? I'm Jerry D of Totally Rad Christmas, the podcast that talks all things Christmas in the 80s. Toys, movies, specials, music, books, fashion, and fads.
If it was gnarly during Christmas in the 80s, he's got it covered. Wait, is there a lot of things to talk about for the 80s and Christmas?
Well, you got the movie giants like Christmas Vacation, Scrooged, and A Christmas Story. There are TV specials like Muppet Family Christmas, Claymation Christmas Celebration, and a Garfield Christmas special.
Plus classics shown every year.
You also jam out to Last Christmas, Do They Know It's Christmas, and Christmas in Hollis. But most of all, it was a time for the most bodacious, best-selling Christmas toys ever, like He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers,
and Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yes, them too. We cover them all, plus much more, including standard segments like Hap Hap Happiest Memory, Gag Me with the Spoon, The Other Half of the Battle,
and Chant with the Littles.
So tune in to Totally Rad Christmas everywhere you get your podcasts. Turn the clock back and dive into those warm and fuzzy memories.
Later, dudes.
Hey there, fellow 80s movie aficionados. Are you ready to embark on a nostalgia-filled journey to the greatest era of cinema? Then look no further than the Retro Life for You 80s Movie Podcast. Join us every week as we rewind the VHS tapes, dust off those Betamax classics, and dive headfirst into the neon-soaked, totally tubular world of the 1980s movies. From the Brat Pack to action heroes, we've got it all covered. Breakfast Club, Ghostbusters, E.T. and Indiana Jones, and more. It's like a trip in Doc Brown's time machine, but without the DeLorean. So whether you're a die-hard 80s film buff or just curious about the cinematic gems of the past, Retro Life for You is your ticket to the ultimate movie time warp. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Retro Life for You, and we can be found anywhere you listen to your podcast, as well as on our website, www.retrolife4u.com.
All right, let's talk about iconic scenes. I mean, we know what the iconic scene is, right? I mean, we can all
full
agree.
Of them.
Yeah, but the most iconic is by far her touching the TV, which even watching the movie, you think it's when she touches it the first time, but she doesn't. And actually, when she says it, she's not touching the TV. She's sitting at the end of the bed. So there's a little bit of that, the Mandela effect of like, wait, I thought she touched the TV and said it. But I think that was in one of the commercials, maybe, or like, a trailer that they made that didn't use actual footage. So, but also it's in the poster. You just see the silhouette of her on the TV and the tagline. So, but yeah,
and I think when anyone parodies that moment, it's like that, because I started watching it and Ruby was in the room and she goes like, I feel like I remember this from Animaniacs. And I was just like, yeah, probably.
Yeah. The references that go way over their head, but the adults are like, oh my gosh, they deep cut. Yeah. What other iconic scenes stand out for you? Or traumatizing scenes?
Well, yeah, we mentioned it earlier, but the scene with the guy peeling off his face, that one definitely was, a cover my eyes scene when I was 9 and 10. But
it's honestly, it's the scene that sticks out the most because it's the only like gory scene.
Yeah, that's
whole
true.
Movie.
Yeah,
and it's just so graphic. But then it's all over. It's such a weird scene. It sticks out like a sore thumb.
It was the last scene they filmed of the movie, and it's actually Steven Spielberg's fingers and hands that are peeling away the thing. So, but yeah, I think like watching it now, it's not quite as creepy because you know that it's a mod. Like you can tell it's fake. Probably as a kid,
creepy.
it was probably I mean, it's like the face melting scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, that's I remember as a kid that freaked me out pretty bad too. Close your eyes, Marion. Like I'm closing my eyes, Indy.
No, I always remember because I feel like my family and we've always quoted this line. It's this house is clean. That
Of
always
course,
sticks in my head.
famously parodied in Ace Ventura. So when he does the crime scene thing, but watching it in its original form was still pretty funny. It's like she's just, this house is clean, like the way he just delivered so perfectly. So what about favorite scenes? Any scenes that you're just like you enjoyed? Is there enjoyment in this movie?
I thought one thing, the introduction, the very first scene with the dog going through the house.
Yes.
Again, it was just something that I hadn't, I've seen this movie dozens of times and as recently as last year, but watching it last night was kind of the first time it struck me just how perfect that is as just a setup. You're following the dog.
You see every person in the family.
Yeah. Also you get the sense right there that's Spielberg, it just feels like following the dog around the house just feels like a very Spielberg kind of thing to do. And just very effective at just setting up the movie.
Yeah. I love the scene where the mom gets Carol Ann back and they're in the bathtub together.
Oh yeah.
And just what a precious moment that is. And then the she looks up and it's like, oh, hi, mommy. Like, oh, because it's just so like you feel, because she does such a great job performing it. You feel the relief. Like it's almost like you've been holding your breath, trying to make sure that this child is okay. Oh, she's in her mother's arms. Oh, everything's going to be okay now.
Yeah.
It's not, but it feels that way.
Yeah. It's good. It was a great kind of false ending where you think, oh, the house is clear. Everybody's good. She's got a little gray streak that came from being on the other side or whatever. And, it's like, okay. So, but then that, like stuff really gets real after that point where the doll tries to kill the son and, all the things come out of the ground, the pool scene, of course, which we'll talk about. Favorite scenes for me. I do like the scene with the guy, the guy going into the kitchen like that. That's a good creepy scene of the steak moving across the counter and then it starts to like come out, from the inside out. And then the piece of chicken he's eating, he throws on the ground and it's got maggots. I was like, oh yeah, maggots are always going to make me, dry heave. Yeah. I thought that was a good, good scary scene or whatever. I do like the scene of kind of the light coming down the stairs. Like that's a very, intense moment where they're trying to film it. Of course, the one guy, I feel bad for the guy, drawing his picture and you can't even pay attention to you got the headphones on, you're supposed to be paying attention and the camera's moving, it's waiting for something to happen. And then the guy comes in and you see the lights come down, which I know they say they kind of retcon that into the second movie, that if you look closely, those are the images on the film are people that are kind of dressed in like an old, like black and ties and, 30s and 40s kind of attire, which ties into the story of the second one. But I thought that was good. I did like the scenes with the older doctor, the scientist lady. Once again, great for exposition. She tells a lot about, kind of trying to help them understand what's happening. I didn't mention her in the cast because she was like an actress from like the 50s and 60s, had done some things, but nothing that we would probably recognize. But I liked her character. I thought that was a good, and that she believed the mom, her and like the bond she had with Jo Beth Williams, I thought was good. Like that's what sets us apart from a lot of other horror movies. There's a heart to the story. Like you said, you root for the family. You want Caroline to be found. You grieve with the mother, and they're all, and even the whole family, they're all downstairs sleeping that night or whatever. And, they're kind of whisper talking and trying not to, I don't wake the ghosts up or whatever. But just they all have concern for their sister. They all have love for their family. Once again, I thought that was good storytelling. Once again, that's why Spielberg is so good at what he does, kind of bringing that human element to a supernatural story.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to what we were saying earlier. They're a wholesome family, and they believe each other. Like if Laramie were to come to me and he said a ghost has taken our child and our child is not there, I mean, he's never lied or said anything crazy. I'd give him the benefit of the doubt. Like
right.
He's also not a ghost person, so if he says it, I'd definitely believe it. But yeah, it drives me nuts when half of a ghost story movie is somebody just trying to convince somebody that they're telling them the truth.
The skeptic that you're trying to convince.
Yeah.
This one really doesn't have that. Now, I do want to bring up the scene that I did kind of scratch my head out today when they go over to the neighbor's house. And they're kind of like, have you seen anything weird going on or whatever? But the mosquitoes are like eating them alive. I'm like, was the mosquito supposed to be like some kind of sign or a signal? Because like the next scene they're putting, because at first I thought they were just making it up, like the mosquitoes because they were nervous. But then goes the next scene and she's putting the medicine on the mosquito bites. And I'm like, were the mosquitoes part of the curse of the house, like following them and trying to keep them from telling the neighbors or what? That scene didn't really connect with me, and that'll go into, well, I'll kind of bring it up now. Many viewers have pointed out that only one of the houses in the neighborhood is affected by ghosts, even though the whole neighborhood and many of their houses were built on the same ground. However, there are two sections of the movie that explain this discrepancy. One in which Stephen tells a prospective buyer that his family was one of the first to move into the neighborhood, and another in which Stephen's boss mentions that Carol Ann was born in the house. The novelization makes the connection more explicit. Because Carol Ann was born in the burial ground, the spirits gravitated toward the Freeling household, attracted by her life force. So that's why she was the one they wanted, and why it was just their house that was necessarily being affected. Which I'm glad I saw that, because that did kind of bother me, especially at the end when like everything's kind of blowing up when they're leaving the neighborhood. But it's like, why? And even the neighbors, like, you've had, they hear the screaming, there's lights coming out of the house. Nobody's ever come, hey, are you guys okay? Nobody's called the cops. Like the police haven't shown up once, You
would have thought that annoying neighbor would have at least called the cops and been like, this family over here is driving me nuts.
Yeah. I did like a little exchange of them, like, changing each other's, channels, which I thought was funny. Like, old school problems with the remote controls. I guess, if you would live too close to somebody, it might still happen. We both have the exact same TV. Our remote can work both of them, but that was kind of a good funny scene at the beginning. Any other scenes you guys want to talk about before we jump into trivia?
I was thinking about the bathtub, after she brings Carol Ann down, and it struck me just how much what they were covered in looked like strawberry jello. So I think the afterlife is made out of strawberry jello.
Okay. Yeah.
Here's hoping, Ben. Here's hoping.
It was kind of gross, like when he caught the tennis balls, and I'm like, they're totally covered in that, which it looked like kind of a fleshy, like it was probably that sounds good. Strawberry jello, I can dig it.
Yeah.
All right, so an earlier draft of the film, which was called Nighttime or It's Nighttime, had substantial differences from the final film, including an older teenage son named Carrie. The haunting being the result of the neighborhood being built over the secret burial ground of a group of pioneers who were massacred by a savage Native American tribe who worshipped an evil fire god. The Freelings become ostracized and later persecuted by the community. The haunting spreading out to the rest of the neighborhood. Steve being possessed before having sex with Diane. Diane secretly resenting Carol Ann because she was an accidental pregnancy. Carol Ann and Dana both being possessed by spirits, with Carol Ann repeating the original title over and over, and Dana reliving a pioneer's horrific fate of being burned alive. And the death of Carol Ann. Writers Mark Victor and Michael Grass insisted that one member of the family had to die, and when Steven Spielberg relented and asked which one, they chose Carol Ann, much to Spielberg's surprise and chagrin. The original ending of the film had Carol Ann being possessed by the ghost and abandoned by her family and left to die as the house burns down, leading to the entire neighborhood becoming a literal ghost town. Spielberg was uncomfortable how dark and bleak the script became and insisted it be toned down. Several of the ideas the writers had would later be reused for Poltergeist 2, The Other Side. Much darker and not good.
No.
That's problematic. Don't like it.
Yeah. That's why rewrites are very popular in Hollywood. Like, don't get married to the first draft. You're going to go through many, many, many changes. There's no curse. We've established that. But when Robbie's being strangled, the clown's arms became extremely tight and Robin began to choke. When he screamed out, "I can't breathe," Spielberg and Hopper thought the boy was ad-libbing and just instructed him to look at the camera. When Spielberg saw his face turning purple in the video monitor, he ran to remove the clown's arms from Robin's neck. Oliver Robbins added that if Spielberg hadn't been there, maybe he wouldn't be there today. So he was actually choking on the clown.
Because clowns are evil in real life.
Right. Yeah.
He was almost the first victim of the curse.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Jo Beth Williams was hesitant about shooting the swimming pool scene because of the large amount of electrical equipment positioned over and around the pool. Spielberg crawled in the pool with her to shoot the scene. He told her, "If a light falls in, we both fry." The strategy worked and Williams got in the pool. Now, this is probably the most popular thing that you've probably seen on Facebook. Long after the filming the sequence, the actor learned an unsettling truth. She said, "I always assumed that the skeletons were made by the prop department," she told Vanity Fair. A few years later, I ran into one of the special effects guys and I said, "You guys making all those skeletons, you must have been really amazing." He said, "Oh, we didn't make those. Those were real." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, they were real skeletons." So, which I'd also saw that Hooper had done the same thing in one of his other movies where he used real skeletons for those scenes. So
apparently it's cheaper.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So.
Less labor intensive, I guess.
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate it so much.
My question is, do the skeletons get their own IMDb page? Because, I mean, they're real people. So they, sorry.
Yeah.
Timeout. You're in timeout. That's awful.
I got to keep it a little light here.
Yeah. All I can think of are like, that person may have like donated their body to science for like, and it just got thrown into a mud pit for a movie.
To be in a classic Spielberg movie. I mean, that's a good trade-off.
Oh, okay.
I see, it's dated now, but it would have been a great like SNL skit of them interviewing the skeletons. Like, yeah, I've worked with Spielberg. I got another gig coming up with another director for another slasher movie. The film was originally given an R rating, no surprise there, from the MPAA due to scenes of a child in peril, despite there being little gore in the film. The rating was lowered to PG on appeal by Spielberg. The film predates the PG-13 rating by 2 years, which is the rating the film would have most certainly got without any issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely the pre-PG-13 era.
Is this considered one of the movies that maybe brought about
I'm
PG-13
sure.
with, parents taking their kids to see it? Oh, it's PG, it must be fine. And then, maybe there was some little bit of backlash over that, I would guess.
Yeah. I mean, I know like Gremlins, all Spielberg movies, Gremlins and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom are like the ones that are most usually noted as like, we need to make a change. But yeah, early 80s, there's definitely some questionable things, not just violence, but there's like full on nudity in some, 80s movies that were PG. So it's a totally different discussion, but it's interesting how the MPAA works. And there's, there are rules, but then you can watch movies and be like, I don't think they're following the rules anymore. And it's kind of like whoever's on the committee at the time, what they allow or what they don't allow. And even like watching these movies or doing the research on movies, like what they'll allow when you have to cut this much out for it to get this kind of rating. It's like, does it really make that big of a difference? But, they have their reasons.
Well, that's what makes me wonder what the appeal Steven Spielberg did is he's like, why don't you look at this script again? Why don't you look at it again? And it's got like several $100 bills attached to it. It's like, why don't you try again?
Right. Yeah, and that was his whole thing was like he wanted it to be PG once again because E.T. was PG and he wanted people to see both movies kind of together. So he didn't want to make an R-rated horror movie.
More people can go see PG movies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
People take their kids. It makes more money.
Yeah. I mean, that they still talk about that today, where like you have like certain sequels that were R-rated originally, they'll try to do a PG-13 sequel, knowing that it'll make more money because more people can, younger kids can see it without an adult. So, and they're always, not as good as the original. So,
but then also adults go like, oh, well, it's PG or it's PG-13, so it'll be fine. So we can all go instead of having to say like, well, I want to go see it, but I've got to schedule a babysitter because I can't take my kids to go see an R-rated movie.
So Poltergeist was released by MGM on June 4th, 1982. It debuted at number 3 behind Rocky 3, which was at number 2 in its second week, and Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which debuted at number 1. The only other new release, it was Star Trek II, Poltergeist, and Hanky. Oh, it was Hanky Panky. That was what it was, with Gene Wilder and Gilda Radner. Hanky Panky was the other new release, and it came in at number 4, so it's right behind. I will say that Poltergeist was in less theaters than the other ones, so technically it probably
really did better.
Yeah, it really did better, but because it's only by total amount made.
And I guess since E.T. came out the following week, Poltergeist was never
number 1.
Never number 1. It's strange to think that such a classic movie was never number 1 for any week at the box office.
It's like It's a Wonderful Life was a flop when it came out, but now it's a classic Christmas movie because of copyright issues and Ed Turner taking advantage of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think even like A Christmas Story wasn't a hit when it first came out. Like they pulled it from theaters before Christmas, like it came out like in late September, early October, whatever. It wasn't even in theaters, but then like the next year when it got more popular, they re-released it like a year later because of running on cable and stuff. So you can go back to our Christmas Story episode and hear that story. But Poltergeist did not reach number 1, but it was still a commercial success, earning $76 million at the U.S. box office, making it the highest grossing horror film of 1982. And it was the 8th overall for the year. So it still did well. It just didn't, there's a problem with putting it a week before E.T. If you didn't hit number 1 and you're going up against Star Trek, Star Trek sequel was gonna, with Ricardo Montalban.
A good sequel.
Yeah. I got to get to the Star Trek movies. I got Star Trek movies and Bond movies I've yet to touch on the podcast. We'll get there eventually. All right, Rotten Tomatoes, 88 on the tomato meter and a 79 on the popcorn meter, which is now it was the audience score. They now call it the popcorn meter. IMDb 7.3 out of 10 with viewers and a 79 on Metacritic. So it's pretty high up there with everybody, So where does it sit for you for scale of 1 to 10?
I'm pretty close. I'm pretty close to a 10 on this one.
Oh wow!
I mean, there are some things that are dated about it.
Yeah.
But put it in the context of the time, and I have trouble finding flaws with it.
Yeah, one thing I didn't bring up was that the special effects hold up really well. Like there's some questionable ones when the scientists first come into the room and like the floating objects are clearly fake, but all of the like spiritual, light beings or whatever were like really well done.
Yeah. And then the house collapsing at the end too.
Yes,
that was very convincing. Yeah. And there, there's no CGI there. Assuming a model that I don't know, like they put into some kind of grinder or something. I don't know. I couldn't tell exactly how they did that, but it was convincing.
Yeah. I'm gonna say like a 9. I'm not a big horror movie person, but this is one where I can watch it and I'm not going to have nightmares afterwards, but it's well written. The characters are interesting. And I do still get a little spooked. Like there's the tension and the build, and it's a very well written and directed and performed movie. And so, I'm going to give it a 9.
All right. You're both higher than me. I would, I really like going back, like when I watched it a couple of years ago, I gave it like a 6, but I think because it was more dated than I thought it was going to be, and because it seemed a little bit more silly. But like I said, watching it this time, I really kind of wanted to watch it with a more of a, not a critical eye, but like appreciating it for what it was, like thinking, just kind of watching it in that context. And I do appreciate it more now watching it this time and understanding the story a little bit better. And appreciating the performances and stuff. So I'm going to give it like an 8, like a, like 8.5, which is still pretty high for me. I mean, it's because my grading is really on rewatchability. Is this one I'm going to watch every October? No, probably not. But it'll be one that I'll want to watch like every couple of years. Like it's still rewatchable and enjoyable. Well, thank you guys so much for joining the podcast today. Glad to have you as always. Folks, that's a wrap on this episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. If you enjoyed the trip down memory lane, we'd love it if you'd leave us a glowing 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss out on more awesome 80s movie fun. Got a favorite flick you want to talk about or a question for us? Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. We love hearing from fellow 80s movie fans. Want to go the extra mile? You can support the show at buymeacoffee.com. Every little bit helps. And don't forget to swing by 80sflickflashback.com or our TeePublic store for some rad 80s Flick Flashback merch and original designs. And we are now on YouTube, which we've always been on YouTube, but now you can actually listen to the full episode podcast on YouTube. I've uploaded all the episodes from this year, and all new episodes will automatically load there as well. Thank you, Bethany. Thank you, Ben. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm Tim Williams, the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. I got beat up once by 3 kids. They took my lunch money. Maybe they got hit by a truck and they're upstairs right now.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.